Hey folks, this is Rick from Big Woods, and I just wanted to fill you guys in on my video. I videoed myself, so I didn't catch all the details of that hunt, and I shot a really big buck in Maine Saturday. One of the biggest bucks I've ever killed tracking on snow rack-wise, and I thought he was going to be one of the biggest one weight-wise, but I think he chasing too many does and he was run down. But he had a foot on him the size of my hand, so he was a pretty good buck. And I just want you guys to check it out and hope you enjoy it. And if you don't like it, next time I'll do a little better.
There you go. So, yep, this is Brian Connor, the Big Woods Bucks content manager. So me and Rick are gonna sit down and we're gonna get the full story of the buck, exactly every little detail that happened, because Rick was fast and furious on that track, like he always is. So he couldn't film every detail. So you can get all the details here in this interview. If you want to cut right to the action, just take that little, the little bar there and scroll over to the action. About 3/4 of the way through the video, you'll be able to cut right to it. If you want all the details, all the helpful tracking tips that Rick gives, hopefully that this interview will provide that. So, all right, let's get right to it. You shot a big one, huh, Rick?
I did. Yeah, I shot a monster. Yeah, it was pretty good. It was a really good 2 days of tracking. I found that buck's track on Friday. We had pretty good snow, and I didn't find his track Friday till like 10 o'clock, and so it kind of shortened the day up, and I put about 8.5 miles on him on Friday, and I ended up jumping him like 2:30 on Friday. So that didn't give me a whole lot of time, only 2 hours on his track after I jumped him. So I jumped him out of his bed, and he did the classic thing that a big buck does. He went through this really thick fir thicket, just shoulder to shoulder fir trees. So, and up here in Maine, there's a lot of them, on those mountaintops and stuff. So there's really no way around it. So I just pushed my way through that fir thicket and made a lot of noise, because it was one of those quiet days where you could hear a pin drop. And the minute I come out the other side, there's a big blowdown to my left, and there's about 30 or 40 big buck tracks standing in front of it where he'd been feeding it. And we got this moss we call it old man's beard, that grows on the dead fir trees. And he had picked that clean. You could see he picked every bit of that old man's beard off of there. So immediately I looked at that and I said, oh, he's going to lay down. And I looked to my right and I could see about 20 yards, and he walked over and he picked another fir tree clean. So I said, man, he's laying right here. So I grabbed my grunt. I grunted to him 3 or 4 times. I waited and I waited and I waited, probably like 10, 15 minutes. Then I moved forward. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, he already heard me come through them firs, so I probably jumped him. But you never know. Sometimes they hear you coming through. They might think you're a moose. They might think you're another buck coming up their backtrack. So sometimes they'll jump out of their bed and they'll run off, and they'll stand there and wait. But it wasn't the case. So I kept moving forward, and pretty soon I come to his bed and I see where he jumped and bounded out of it. And he was doing like 25-foot leaps. He was a big deer. And you could tell by the side of his head.
You just found his track then, right there where he happened to be bedding?
No, I was on his track all day, cold.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I finally got to the end of the loop where he decided to lay down. So gotcha. I just jumped him. So I was finally on a fresh track, because I was on a cold track all morning trying to sort him out. He had been like, at that point, like 5 miles on, searching for does.
Can you give us a sense too of just how recent the snowfall was? Because we were talking about that a little, how to age tracks, and was this right after the?
Well, we were lucky because It snowed last week it snowed on Tuesday. This was Friday. I found his track. It snowed on Tuesday, and I had to work Tuesday, and then Wednesday and Thursday. I had to work down here. So I hunted a little bit down around the house because I had to work some and get things taken care of. And I was going to hunt Thursday and Friday and Saturday. So I ended up finding his track. Thursday, I searched all day Thursday looking for a big one. I found 20 different bucks, but you know me, I like the biggest track in the woods. I couldn't really find anything that, really turned me on to follow. So I went back Friday morning, and that's when I found his track. His track looked old, but I knew he was a big one. I figured he was 240, but I think he was just run down, chasing does.
Right.
You got to figure, I run him about 21 miles during the daylight in 2 days, and they don't lay down at night at all. They're searching all night. So he probably put 8 or 10 miles on every night. So that deer put 40 miles on in 2 days.
Jeez. Now so after you kicked them up, sorry, I took it a little out of order. So after you kicked them up that first day, did you continue after him? Or
no, I stayed right after him till dark. And
okay.
I stayed on him till dark, and I followed him. He went across a small river, not a big one. He went actually across that small river 3 times. He kind of zigzagged back and forth it. That was a small river. It was only, halfway up my boots. It wasn't over my knees. And so I followed him, and he ended up behind my pickup truck where I started him, and he went right by my truck. And so I stayed on him. After he went by my truck, I had like an hour of daylight left, and I never give up. So I stayed on him till last light, till I couldn't see anymore, and then ended up walking back to the truck. I did hit a tote road, and I took the long way back on the tote road, and I walked back to the truck. It took me an hour and a half to get to the truck in the dark, and I was soaking wet, sweating, and so I came home, ate supper, went right to bed, and we got up the next morning, and a friend of ours went with me. That's a friend of my mother and father's, and she ended up going, and I give her a GPS so she keep track of me all day, and which helped out a lot because she saved me about a 4-mile walk out that night after I killed him.
Nice.
Yeah. I was pretty wet. I was pretty wet the day I killed him. So I got up the next morning and drove up, and I kind of knew where he went the night before, and he was headed for the river, the big river. And I said, yeah, he's going to go down in that corner, because they always go down in by that corner in the river, and there's always 2 or 3 pockets of does in there. And that's the minute you stop tracking a buck, within a half an hour, within 30 minutes, once they know that you're not tracking them anymore, they forget about you completely, and their mind's on does again. So he went right down, and I'm sure he checked those 2 or 3 groups of does. So that's where I kind of headed to find his track in the morning. And at 6:30, it was like 30 minutes after daylight, I see his track crossing the road. I got out, and I recognized his track. He had the biggest track in the area, probably within 10 miles.
Right.
So I got on his track right there, and I actually got on it cold because I missed his track about a mile up the road coming in because it was too dark.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
so how long did that take you to get back to that then?
2.5 hours, because he made about a 3.5 miles zigzag of in and out, checking every damn doe there was.
Wow.
Right. So yeah, but so once I come out in the road, I was like, well, at least I know where he is now. He's on this side. And they were logging in there. That's part of the reason I missed that track, is they're logging in there right now. And right where he crossed was on a corner. And as I was coming around that corner, I was concentrating more as I was coming around the corner as far ahead as I could see in case I met a logging truck, because it was light enough out so they wouldn't have their headlights on, but dark enough out so that the tracks really didn't show up. It was dim.
Right.
So that's how I missed it.
But you could tell you'd driven over his track, so you could tell he had gone by before you came through. Or
yeah, I just knew there was a dust and a snow.
Yeah.
And yeah, I drove over his track, and I could just tell it was cold. I hadn't jumped him, and I missed it. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm really good at aging tracks. I mean, sometimes right down to the minute. You've been with me.
Oh yeah, big time.
So yeah, so I got on him there, and I zigzagged him around this big plantation, and you could tell he was searching for those, and all of a sudden he just lined up and he headed north. Right up the side.
Right. Plantation? You mean like where they intentionally grown a certain type of tree?
Yeah. Well, it's like a spruce fir plantation in there where they went in and they hand planted it all, and then they go in and limb them.
Oh yeah, I saw that with Mark up in Jackson.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
they actually thin it out in there so that the trees grow faster. So they go in there and thin out, like four out of 5 trees, and they'll leave the one best one.
Gotcha. And so go ahead. I cut you off a little. So
those big bucks love those plantations. They'll get in there and they're limbed up, and you can just see for like 100 yards, but it's pretty dark in there, and it's usually pretty rolly, and they love to go through those plantations. They'll make scrapes in there, rubs in there. They'll lay down in there on those little hummocks because they can look, and it's kind of secluded, so they like those spots. Shot a few in there. So he went through that plantation, and then he just headed north. So he's headed up the side of this river, and I don't know if you call it a river or just a big stream, but it was over my knees everywhere I crossed it. I got pretty wet, and the first time I didn't get wet, but after that I did. I'll tell you that story. So he headed north, and he went like 2 miles north right up the side of this river, and I kept thinking, where the heck is he going? And I said, there's really no does up in there, and I usually know where the doe pockets are, and I couldn't figure out where he was going. And all of a sudden, he hooked left, and he crossed that small river, And I come to the river, and of course, being on a buck that size, I mean, a smaller buck, you would have second guessed it and go, do I really want to get wet? And here it is, only 15 degrees out, go across this river.
Right.
And it's just on his track, it was no brainer. I said, he's on the other side, and I want to kill him.
Right.
So, and here's another thing. So here's a key, a point to track us.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put your boots on, if you pull your wool pants up and you tape the top of your boot to your calf tight, okay? That's what I do with duct tape. And that keeps my boot from, because normally I got small calves and my boots will make a little flapping noise every step. So that tightens that up. The other thing, it keeps the water from, because the water actually doesn't soak through your wool pants. When you go into a river, the water actually comes up inside your pants and then goes down in your boots.
Right.
So if you tape the tops of those boots tight, and I wear those muck boots, those tracking muck boots.
Right.
And then you tape the bottom of your wool pants tight, and that adds 2 things. That keeps the water from going up and then down in your boots. And it also keeps the snow from balling up on your cufflinks on your pants, so you don't have these great big wads of snow. And after about 3 or 4 hours on a track, going through bogs and waters and, all that crap.
That was me the other day. Yeah.
Right. So that's why you always want to tape your tent, and it doesn't tire you out as quick because your feet kind of just slide like a deer right through that snow. You don't have that big, big pant
like ice.
Frozen.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. That'll wear you down 3 times faster.
Oh, it was like 10 pounds on each leg. It was awful. Yeah.
Right. So guys ask, they go, how do you do 13 miles in a day? And I go, that's just it's normal. That's just a walk in the park for me. It really is. And you figure if you're doing 1.5 miles an hour on a deer track all day, which really isn't that fast, that's just kind of a normal sneaking pace. In a 10-hour day, there's 15 miles.
Just an editor's note: Rick is the most in shape. I've said it before. I wrote about it in that article, but he's one of the most in shape people I ever met. And he takes strides like a 7-foot tall person. You'd think you were following Shaquille O'Neal. It's unreal.
Guy
just to note that for the viewers.
Yeah. The guy I took
went
today, a buddy of mine, and he's like 38, and we got done. We tracked this buck like 7 miles. We never jumped him, and we got on the wrong end of his track. And we went like 7 miles, and at the end of the day, he goes, "Hey," he goes, "I just want to let you know, if I was alone, I would have gone half that distance that we just went."
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
I was telling you about my hunt just 2 days ago with a
Yeah.
buddy of mine. Or no, it was yesterday. And we went 6 miles. We were exhausted. I'd had a little stomach thing because I drank from a stream that wasn't quite right. And he
Yeah.
dragged a buck 2 miles the previous day. But we went 6 miles. We were totally exhausted. We were shocked that it was 6 miles. And you'd killed yours at that point. I said, imagine now going more than double that. That's what Rick did. And we're gassed after 6 miles. He went 13 and a half. So it gives you an idea how fast and he goes. So anyway.
So I crossed that stream, and I didn't get wet the first time. I was totally dry. I went right up to my knees, and no water got into my socks and my boots because I had them taped up. And so I got over across there, and I got into this big peat moss bog. And one of those peat moss bog, they got all these, I call them bramble bushes. And what they have is like a cranberry bush that are about 2 feet tall, and they're really thick in there. So it's almost impossible to be quiet. And so I'm following his track through that peat moss, which you can't really see a track. It's like a pock mark down in there, but he had such a big foot on him, it almost looked like a moose track, you know? And I got in there and I'm thinking, man, what's he doing over in here? And all of a sudden, I came into about 4 or 5 fresh tracks of does, and there's his track smoking hot. So, and I was on it. It was froze solid when I was on it. I just stopped right there, and I said, "Whoa, he's right here." I said, he probably was in a bed ahead of me, and he got up with those does, and what he did is he looped around and went right through his backtrack. So immediately I just grabbed my grunt, and I grunted there 3 or 4 times. I waited and grunted again and waited, and nothing. So I thought, well, I'll stay on his track. So I got on that fresh track, and I was going as slow as I could, but still pretty noisy in that little bog. And I got on his track then, and he made like 6 little figure 8 loops right through his track, back and forth, and all those does. And then pretty soon I see one running doe track. I grunted a few times. And I thought, no, he heard me long before I got here. So I immediately, instead of wasting 2 or 3 hours trying to sort all these tracks out, I backed right out of that bog, and I went right to the outskirt of that bog, and I made a loop. You could see it on Onyx. I zoomed right in on Onyx, and you could see the bog, and it was almost like a football shape, you know. So I said, I'm gonna loop right around the whole edge of that bog till I pick his track up, because I was positive he already blew out of there.
So another quick editor's note. This is important tip, folks. I mean, you know, for Rick, this is commonplace, but for me, this was super eye-opening when I went out with Rick. It was just the idea of making loops around territory like that, because you could spend hours picking your way through that, trying to figure out what's going on. If you're pretty confident they left,
I never would. Right.
It never occurred to me till I hunted with you. That changed the way I hunt.
That here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. So just wanted to note that real quick, but yeah. So you did the loop.
Right, because if you had wasted all the time to sort that track out, you probably would have been 2 hours, and I never would have killed that deer, because that 2 hours at the end of the day was the window I had to kill him.
Right.
So I backed out and I made that loop right around, and pretty soon, sure enough, there was his track just leaping 25-foot bounds, and I was pretty sure it was him, just because it was such a big, you know, pock mark in the snow, but you couldn't really see his prints. So I followed him a ways, and until he got to a thicket, because when they get to a thicket, they can't really run through it. They got to actually slow down and stride. And then his track showed right there. And then I said, yeah, that's him. And he immediately, and a big buck will always do this almost 100% of the time. They want to go where they came from because they feel safe. So he went right straight back to where he crossed the river with me, and right down my tracks. Right. Yeah, right back his backtrack. So he crossed the river again. Well, so I got to the river that time, and there's kind of some rapids there and stuff. So I grabbed the walking stick, because I pretty near fell down the first time I went across. It was so slippery on the rocks and with the current. Right. So I picked up an old dead log for a walking stick. I got back across the river. Well, I got pretty wet that time. You probably saw that in the one video I had where I was wringing my socks
bringing
out.
your socks out, and you'll see that, folks. Yep.
Yeah. So I got back across the river there, wrung my socks out on a log, and I jumped right back on his track. And he actually, so I think he tried to shake me. He figured he'd shake me when he went across that river. I think he probably shook most hunters that ever were on him. So he slowed right down and he started just walking and meandering again. Well, next thing I know, he hooks up with 3 or 4 does that were really fresh tracks that had come through before I went across the river. And he started dogging those does just back and forth. And then he actually, he jumped them. You could tell he jumped them because the does started to run to try to stay away from him. So I picked the pace up a little bit. And then he got up to this area that, and he was still right on his back track. The does were following his back track too. And every now and then I'd cross my track, just zigzagging back through the woods. And there was a clearing that I crossed when I had come out on his track, kind of an old cut.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was wicked close to him. I could tell by the track. I said, I'm less than 5 minutes behind him right now. You know,
right. Was there something about the track? Or was it just the timing of everything that happened?
No, when you get really close to a buck and the snow, it was starting to warm up in the afternoon. It was right around 30 degrees. And when a buck steps into like moss, anything wet, like wet moss is a perfect example. They'll pull that orange dye out of that moss into their track, and it looks kind of orangey, kind of brown in the bottom of it when they step, and you can see the kind of like the spongy detail in every little detail in their print. If that goes more than like 10 minutes, it'll take that detail, that real precise detail away.
And it just fluffs back up again. You lose that?
No, it just kind of fades out from the water in the track. And the other thing,
the color of the moss, you're saying, fades out from the snow. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and the other thing is, whenever they get into some, and a deer will go through a wet hole like nothing. Water does not bother a deer one bit. They'll swim 10 times a day if they have to. It doesn't faze them at all. And the only thing phases them is ice. They don't like glare ice at all, and they won't go out where it's half frozen hardly ever, and then fall into a stream, try to get back out. You never see them do that.
Gotcha.
So if you go through a water hole, I always look and see how dirty the water is, because that'll gauge the time limit on how old. Because if that water starts to clear up, 10 to 20 minutes, it'll start to settle out and clear up. That means you're quite a ways behind that buck. So I'll pick the pace up if that water starts to clear up. If that water is really, really muddy brown, and you can still see the dirt particles in it, you're really close to that buck, and you want it. I keep my this time of year, the second and third week, I keep my grunt almost right out of my pocket, because if I think I'm really close to that buck, I'm just going to hold up and I'm going to grunt to him.
Okay.
And doesn't always work, but works quite a bit.
Okay, gotcha.
Worked for Joe today, you know.
Yeah. So you're saying, right?
Yeah, and Matt Vinan too. It worked for him. He grunted his buck to him.
And my buddy I was just mentioning, who grunted it right back down the track.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, them guys are all good trackers.
Yeah,
all of them. So anyway, I stayed on his track, and I started to get pretty close to him there, and so I had my 7600 right in my hand, with my hand right on the safety, and I got to that clearing, and I was thinking, man, I got to hurry to that clearing. Maybe I can catch him before he gets to the other side of it. And I come to the edge of the clearing, and he was going to his left side, and he was just getting ready to duck in the woods. And my gloves were soaking wet where I crossed that stream, and maybe where I wrung my socks out. And I don't know what happened, but before my front sight settled on him, I pulled up to shoot him, and my gun went off, and it shot right over his back. I knew it did. And he come running right straight at me. And my gun jammed. I think I might have had my 7600 was my oldest one.
Yeah.
And I bought a couple new clips, and I don't think them newer clips work as well in them older 7600s. That's just
Yeah.
the point. They use the old ones because it
So
didn't
what?
work.
How did it? What did it not eject properly? It didn't.
Nope, the shell ejected. When I pumped it, it ejected out, and I couldn't eject the shell back into the chamber. She was
Yeah.
right there. So
Right.
I had to release the clip, drop the clip out, take the shell out of the clip, slide it in the chamber, put the clip back in. And he was gone by then. He was gone.
Jeez.
I could have killed him 3 times right there.
So you had a single shot rifle for the rest of the day.
I did. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So, and I didn't realize this yet, though. So here's the rest of the story. So after that, I fired at him, and I probably went about a half a mile, and he slowed right down again. And I caught up with him again in that plantation, and he was just either starting to lay down. I didn't even go to his bed where he was, but I think he was laying down because I could see his ears and his 2 eyes and his nose and the tips of his horns. But maybe he was behind the knoll, but the minute he saw me, he just ducked and running. So I never got a shot at him. And I ran to try to cut him off, to get a shot. I was too late. So I stayed on him. And he ran for like another quarter of a mile, and then he slowed down. And then I must have caught up with him again because all of a sudden he just turned right and headed for the river again. And I mean, I knew he was headed for the river. And he had a pretty good stride on him then. He was 4 or 5 foot stride between his tracks. So I was putting the pressure on him pretty hard, and I actually ran down that ridge, just trotting right behind him to get to the river, because there's a pretty steep hill about 400 yards on that other side, and it's open hardwoods. And I thought I might catch him because lots of times they'll cross the river. I've seen this a lot. A buck will cross the river, and they'll go to the other side, and they'll go to the hill or halfway to the hill, and they'll stand there and they'll wait to see if you're going to cross and follow them.
Yeah.
Right.
So you were thinking you could catch them from one side of the river, you could shoot across the river and get them.
Oh, yeah, easy. I've done it before. So I got down there and nothing. I waited and waited. And I kind of crept along and scanned that other side. And he'd already made it across. So I looped down, found his track. Sure enough, he went across. So I crossed the river again. That time I didn't wring my boots out. By this time it was about 3 o'clock. Okay. And I'm crossing the river. My truck's over here, 2.5, 3 miles up on the mountain.
Right.
And so I get across the river, and it goes up like a 400-foot bank, almost straight up over there. It's a big gorge. And I'm sweating pretty hard, but then you look in the video, you can see the water running right off me. And, yeah. So I was working pretty hard. I was probably at the 12-mile point by then.
Yeah.
But adrenaline was pushing me, and I wanted to win. So I come up over the river, over that gorge, and it turns into a big hardwood ridge, and it's just like these rolly hills with these hardwood ridges. And hardwood ridge is probably, like a mile long by 300 yards wide. And he starts zigzagging in there. So I'm thinking, man, he forgot about me again. He's just searching for those again. He doesn't think I'm coming back across that river. So I said, I'm going to kill him right here. I'm going to get another shot at him. And I come over that third hill, and I remember looking up, and I said, and I'm not a religious guy at all, but I do kind of believe this way. I said, hey, Bern, I said, if you're up there with me today, I said, I want you to just give me one more shot at this buck broadside, one more shot. This is honest to God. I come over that last third ridge, and he's standing broadside 150 yards. And there was a great big maple tree to my left, so I put my forearm against that maple. I laid that front bead on his chest, and I fired. He took off. I see him kind of collapse there. And I thought in my head, I said, I got him. I went to jack another shell immediately, gun jammed again. So I watched him run. I'm trying to get the clip out, and I watched him run 200 yards up through that ridge, and I never got another shot. And by then it's about 3:45, but at this time. So I got 45 minutes of daylight left. and I just shot at him again. What's the chances of getting another shot at him? I'm thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I took my clip out of the gun. I took every bullet out of the clip. I put them all in my pocket. I put one shell, 130-06 shell in my left hand, right on my forearm, my stock, one in the chamber. So then I'm, like you said, I'm at a single shot now.
Right.
So and he took off running. He was going. I come to his track, there ain't a drop of blood there. And I'm like, what the heck? I missed him again. So I'm thinking, man, I must have shot high. So I said, if I catch up with this buck again, I says, I'm going to put it on the bottom of his brisket. So I come to this next ridge. I went through these plantations, and I'm burning up time. The sun actually went down behind the horizon there, and it's starting to get a little bit dim. And I said, man, I'm never going to kill him in these plantations like this because it's just too thick and too dark.
Right.
And that went on, I don't know, I probably 2 more miles, you know, almost that last 45 minutes or whatever it was. And I had like 20 minutes of daylight left. And I come over this last hill, and I'm thinking, man, I just need one more open spot to maybe catch up with him.
Right.
And I come over this last hill, and just as I looked down across the cut, I kind of eased up over that hill thinking, yeah, I might see him right here. There he is. He's down there about 150, 175 yards, and he's walking to my right. And I pulled up, I put the bead on the bottom of his brisket. He come out behind some raspberry trees there, and I fired at him, and he took off. I jacked that shell out, slid the next one that was in my hand back in. He was still going, but he was walking pretty stiff-legged. I was pretty sure I hit him, but I don't stop shooting at them until they're down. I fired at him again, pulled another shell out of my pocket, jacked that one out of the chamber, slid one back in. He'd gone like another 50, 60 feet. He wasn't going that fast, so I was pretty sure I hit him.
Right.
Fired another one at him, and he disappeared. I pulled another one out of my pocket, jacked that shell out of the chamber, slid another one in, and I started working my way down there pretty fast. I get down there, and I'm looking for him. I'm thinking, oh man, maybe I didn't get him. He might have got away. And just as I'm kind of looking in the direction he went, and I saw something moving, he was 10 feet in front of me, he was down.
Wow.
He tried to get up. I put another one in his neck.
So that was this. You said this is your second best rack of any buck you've ever shot in Maine. Is that right?
Yeah, in Maine. Yeah. I think I haven't scored him yet, but I think he's gonna score like in the mid 150s.
Okay.
Around there. Yeah, he's a pretty good buck. He's heavy and yeah.
210, right? 210 pounds.
210, but I weighed him on Barry's scale, and which I don't know if it's, but I've been weighing deer on that scale for 36 years now up at Barry's store. And I brought him home, and I took him up, showed my dad, because Dad hunted with me for 30 years, dragging out big bucks I killed all over the place. And
right.
he says, man, that buck weighs more than 210. He says, he says, you need to get him reweighed. So I got an old spring scale, and I weighed him on that, and he weighed 226. So I don't know, mine ain't certified either. So, but
right.
I think he does weigh more than that. And I also, being the third week of the season, the end of the third week of the season, they've usually lost about 10 to 15% of their weight.
Right, because you say when you're looking at the track in the video, you say this looks like 240 or 250, and
yeah, I was
rut it out.
Yeah, oh yeah. You look at the frame, just the frame of his body and his chest and everything, and he's just a huge buck. He's one of the better ones I've ever killed.
That's awesome. Yeah,
walking up to a buck like that, after all that hard work, and especially that day, I had so many ups and downs and highs and lows that day, missing and and all that hard work, crossing that river 3 times and just up and down those mountains on his track. I never stopped for even a sandwich all day.
Wow, unreal. I'd have to say you're right that Byrne was looking out for you.
Oh,
what a story.
I'm pretty sure he was there. I'm pretty sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, I think now I got a doe tag. I'm going to try to probably kill the doe with this 30-30.
Cool. Yeah.
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 Cool. Or come on down to the Adirondacks and shoot one there with the 30-30.
Yeah. I'd like to. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm tagged out. I'm
or
tagged
New
out now.
New Hampshire.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
That'd be cool.
So.
All right.
But,
well,
yeah, so we ended up. I called Joe. Joe up and I said, "Hey, Joe, where you at?" He says, "Oh, I'm down home, Skowhegan." I says, "Oh man," I said, "I just killed a huge buck," and I said, "There's no way I can drag him out of here by myself." And he says, "Oh, my son-in-law Braden's up there right now." He says, "Hold on, I'll call you right back." So Braden happened to be heading south on 201, and he was just going by the end of the road where I was in.
Nice. There you go.
Told him, he says, "Hold up right there." He says, Rick needs some help, and Braden come in and help me. Man, what a help.
Oh, nice.
Then,
that's great. Yeah.
Well, I helped Braden drag a buck out tonight, so I returned the favor in no time.
There you go.
Yeah, he killed a good buck up there at Jackman.
You had a name for the buck. Is that right, Rick?
Yeah, I called him Slewfoot because he had one toe that sit ahead of the other one, and it curled in a little bit, kind of like it slewed in, and so that was a nickname I gave him, Slewfoot. I usually give every buck I'm tracking a nickname, and some of them you kill, some of them you never do. But
I don't know how much ignorance I'll be exposing right now, but what's a SLUE?
What's a SLUE?
Yeah.
Oh, just when one toe kind of, goes ahead and kind of curls in a little bit from the other one, it's not a perfect match.
Is that right? Is that like on humans too, or that's just on deer? They say that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of on animals with hooves.
Oh, okay. Huh.
Where where anything with a split hoof, where one toe would be ahead of the other. I think he probably broke his toe at one point.
Okay. Huh.
Healed back, so it was kind of offset, and it was easy to distinguish that I was on him because he had that one foot that was. You just follow his track like about every third or fourth step. You could see that slew foot.
Right. Gotcha.
So
slew
that's
foot.
what I called him, slew foot.
That's what we'll put in the video title too. That's cool.
Sounds good. Yeah.
This is the video that Rick took on this track, and we hope you enjoy it. So, yeah, enjoy.
Thanks. Hope you guys enjoy it. It's about 9:30. I just found a really big buck track. I've been on him for a while. He's been zigzagging around, chasing a bunch of does. He finally left him, and he just crossed the road here, old logging road. He's going into an area where I killed a couple big ones years ago, so stay after him here. He's a big buck. He's way over 200. I show you his track here in a second. See the size of that buck? He's pretty wide. It's a good one. I got a feeling he's either gonna go up in here and lay down, or he's going to look for some more does, so I'm gonna poke along, see if we can get a crack at him. He wants to get across this brook.
on this buck all morning. Cut his track there about 7 o'clock. Yeah, and had to get him sorted out. He was in a bunch of does and kind of weaving around, checking all them does. It was like 4 or 5 does and back on the other side of the tote road there. He's going up into this other side now. This little ridge in here has been cut probably 20 years ago. And I've shot a couple good ones in here years ago. So we're gonna see if we can get a crack at him. The wind's not bad, a little bit of wind. It's kind of at my back, but that's all right. I just crossed this stream. Been on this buck for a while. I think he's gonna go lay down. Deer. Yeah, we've been on this buck for about 2 hours now, and you can see he's going back into an area he came from a couple days ago. I'll show you in a minute here. But I've been through his old tracks, a little bit of snow in them, 3 or 4 different times. So he lives right here. He's not gonna go a long ways. Some of those bucks go a long ways, but you get into those that kind of live right in the core area. Usually there might be, 5 or 10 does. So they got no reason to leave. But I'll show you his tracks. See, that's his track from 2 or 3 days ago when it first snowed. We got a little dusting. And, he's a real big square-footed buck. I love following these square-footed bucks. They're just easier to follow, and I just love following the big ones. Sometimes they don't always have the big racks, but, they're usually big-bodied deer. But you can tell the way this deer walks. That's the same buck right there. Look at that big square toe. I'm kind of thinking he's gonna lay down here pretty soon, and hopefully I'll come to his bed or something, and he's gotten up, and I can poke along, catch up with him. It's a nice, still, quiet day. I think the chances of shooting at him in his bed's almost impossible, as quiet as it is. But keep poking along here. So, you can see he stopped and he fed right here. What he's eating, these little green leaves. You can see where he picked them off. A bunch of them. So that's a good sign. He's gonna lay down. He's just nibbling on those leaves. He slowed right down too, One of the little key things you gotta look for. He just stopped, made a scrape right here. can see there's a little bit smaller buck here. He's probably 200-pounder, and you can see the difference in the width and the stride and how much snow he's pushing out. It's a lot bigger buck, so it makes it a lot easier to stay on a track. Stay after him here. Never give up. Could be shooting around the next corner. Just rub that tree. Okay. Just come up to where this buck was feeding. See where he had his nose in the ground there, and he's eating these fiddlehead burns. See that? So now we want to really slow down. Pay attention, because he might not be too far. There's a little key you gotta look for right there. Okay, this buck, he just, see where he stopped right here. He's feeding on that old man's beard. You see that green moss? They love that green moss. So he's feeding right here, and I see where he fed again under that tree right over there. So I think he's gonna lay down, so we're gonna go real slow. Well, I just jumped him out of his bed. He fed real heavy there. I knew he was gonna lay down. And I think he caught my wind, because the wind was coming from me to him up his back track. So he knew I was coming long before I got there. But he laid down 3 times, 3 different beds. He kept moving. So sometimes they'll lay down and they don't really like where they are, so they'll move to a different spot where they can see a little better, or they feel a little more secure. But anyway, he was bedded on top of this knoll, and I come to the first bed and I stood there, but he was already gone. I didn't know it, but I was hoping to catch him on walking, feeding out of his bed. But we're gonna give him a little while here to calm down. I'm gonna stay after him there, probably till dark. I'm about 4 miles from my truck. Never give up. Staying on this buck, and I came into a bunch of other deer. They were pretty fresh, and one buck was a really good buck, and he hadn't been jumped, so they were just feeding. So I left that buck alone that I was tracking, and I ended up following him up into this burr thicket, and he bedded there, but I tried grunting to him, but he never got out of his bed till I got close enough to him. And I just see a flash, and he was gone over the hill, but it's worth a try. I think he was a pretty good one, but we're gonna go back after this other one now. Sometimes you get on a fresher buck that don't know you're there, you got a pretty good chance of shooting him, so just a lesson learned. Get back on this track. We got, I don't know, we got like 2.5 hours of daylight left. Just found a real slammer this morning. He's one of them bucks that's 230, 250. So I've been following him for about an hour. Been checking does, so hopefully we can run into him. He's a slammer. Yeah, I've been on this slammer for about 3 hours. He bedded down there. Must have been like 5 a.m. or something. He got up because it's all froze. So I figure a couple hours I should come to his bed here. I see where he fed just before he lay down. He made a scrape right here. I've been on him 4 hours. Maybe 4.5. I just got into this spruce bog. It's all peat moss, and he'd been in here milling all around. But I'd already jumped him. I didn't know it, but he'd been in here feeding around. There's a bunch of other deer. I just figured him out, and he's a big boy. I'll show you the track right here. That was his bed right here where he laid. So he's got like 3 beds where he's been getting up, laying down. So maybe I didn't jump him. We'll find out. I'm gonna stay after him the rest of the day. He's a good buck. Dandy. We crossed that river back there with that buck, and she was over my knees in a couple spots. Wring out my socks and drain my boots in. We'll be good to go. Holy cow. Yeah, this deer's a giant. I just missed him. And I don't know what happened, but the minute I hadn't even put my bead on him, and my gun went off. It's like my trigger was set at 1 pound or something. I know it's not right. Then after it went off, the buck turned, and he come out into this little clearing. I could have killed him 3 times, and I couldn't get a shell jacked in. It was jammed in the open position. I had to take the clip out, put a shell in, he was gone. What a giant. He's got one of them asses that's like 2 feet wide. Hopefully I get another crack at him here. I've been chasing this buck I put 13 miles on today. I just killed him. Ooh, what a slammer. Look at that. Ha! Man, he's a dandy. What a slammer. Man. Put my time in for him. I was ready to give up. I missed him twice. Gun jammed. Holy shit. Man, he's a slammer. Look at him. He's heavy. Man, this is a lot of fun. Killing these bucks, tracking them. I love it. Oh. Wow, he's a dandy. Look at him. Oh, that is a dandy. What a slammer. Well, I've been tracking this big bastard all day. I finally killed him. What a slammer. Wow. End of a hard tracking day right here. Perfect scenario of never give up. 13.5 miles on this brute. I saw him 3 times. I missed him twice. I ended up shooting real low. I aimed really low, like the bottom of his gut. So I finally connected with him just before dark here. What a beauty. I think he's one of my heaviest ones ever in Maine. But what a buck. Boy, I'm tired. I'm thirsty. I crossed the river right up to my knees 3 times. Had to wring my boots out 2 times. Take them off and wring my socks. Empty the water out. Yeah, it's worth it. Heck of a buck. He's a beauty. Man. End of a great tracking day right there. Pretty awesome. Yeah, that's the one I wanted. Yeah, he's a hell of a deer. So you stay after him and don't give up. You'll get him eventually. I hope all you folks out there can learn from tracking and have as much fun as we do. Me and all the boys. That's what it's all about right here. Hell of a buck. Dandy. As you can tell, I'm pretty happy with him. It's been a hard day. Long, hard day. Man. I got 2 grandsons coming along, and won't be long I'll be teaching them how to track these old boys. He's a dandy. I gotta get him out of here.